Alright, how's it going? This is Sam with thinkparticle.com, and in this video we're going to be talking about the new TP Toolkit Pro update. This is the second version of the TP Toolkit Pro, and this is going to be a very powerful update. Comes with currently 7 new different tools built in on top of all of the tools that already existed, and we've got a long list of tools that we're hoping to integrate over the coming months. And so go ahead and check out thinkparticle.com to after this video to pick up your copy and learn more. So anyways, we have all of our emitters still. We haven't added any new emitters just yet, but one of our next objects is supposed to be what's called a tree emitter. And that's going to be like using the TP particle emitter, but it's going to be built in. It's going to emit up to, I think, 3 different segments, or maybe even 4 different segments from particles. So it'll branch out from itself. Anyways, you'll see that in the future. So let's go ahead and start by talking about what's new. The very first thing you'll notice is that in the dynamics, utilities, and renderer sections, the desktop on the PC, I think it is, and the other thing on the Mac, I can't remember what it was, but each section had one in one of the latest releases, and that was a bug that we've now fixed. It's gone. It's great. The next thing is you'll notice that there are 2 new dynamics tools, 3 new utilities tools, and 1 new renderer tool. So actually there might be 4. Yeah, there's 4 new utilities tools. So let's see. The first thing to go over are the 2 new dynamics. There's the spiral and the roll, and we'll talk about those in a bit. And then also there's the kill particles, group randomizer, surface, and volume. And these are utilities that you can use. And the surface and volume operate similarly to the MoGraph emitter, but they are a little bit different, so we'll talk about those. And we're going to grab a simple emitter just so we can show you. Then we also have the clone geo renderer. So the geo renderer only works with editable geometry. The clone geo renderer uses the cloner, and it will have an update in the future. Right now it doesn't work with effectors built in, but we will add that in the future. And anyways, these are the new tools. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at them. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have our emitter out, and we're going to go ahead and drop down and grab our particle group. And we're going to turn the particle type to boxes, and we're going to just go through all of these other objects, these other tools, and just disable them for a bit. Okay. And there we go. We're done. So now you'll notice that we have a lot of particles coming out, and we'll change that down to 30. Okay, so now these particles are all rolling. They're banking right now. Okay. So actually, let's see. It is pitching. So, if we roll it on the x-axis, they'll roll on the x-axis. You can roll them on the y-axis and the z-axis. And you can switch that around. You can also change it to roll on multiple axes and add laziness. It's a lot like working with the, what is it called? It's a lot like working with the alignment tool, but in this case it will be a continuous motion. So right now this is what it does. It just rolls the particles, which can be very handy, especially if you're going to be working with cloning geometry to it. Alright, we're going to turn that off, and now we're going to look at the spiral emitter. Okay. So if we turn these down to ticks, you can see a little bit better. And if we turn off the variation of direction for the emission and add a tracer object, then you can kind of see what's going on here. So it creates these spiral sort of shapes. Okay. So a better way to explain this actually than spiral is it's an oscillator that creates somewhat of a sine wave. And it's pretty cool. It's very dynamic, very flexible, and you can change the amplitude, so you can get bigger or smaller spirals. So you can get these really cool, almost like raindrop or muscular looking shapes You can get either very organic or very words escaping me, very hard surface procedural with this sort of shape. You can add variation, and if we add variation, you'll notice that now as these grow out, they are different shapes, and they will be thinner and thicker instead of being all in the perfect shape. If you look at it this direction, you can see a little bit better. So there you go. The next thing is the speed. If you turn that down, it's how fast they're going to take to oscillate like that. So this isn't actually going to be the speed of direction, it's the speed of the oscillation, or in this case what we call the spiraling. So how long it takes to grow in that sense, okay? If we set it to 100%, they're really quick, okay? And if we set the amplitude to 100 at 100%, you get pretty intense spirals here. It looks like there's beads in the middle. It's kind of cool. You can change the speed variation, and then you just get a lot of complexity in a very mathematical mess. But it's nice. We're going to change it to 25, and then we'll set the phase variation to 15%. I'm actually going to set that to 50 and change the lifespan to 300. There we go. So if we turn up the phase variation, you'll notice that they kind of go out of phase from one another. And again, it gets into this very complicated mess, but it's just absolutely beautiful. Very complicated, very organic, but very, I guess, designed still, very directable. So that is the spiral emitter. That is great for working with particles in a lot of different ways. And you'll notice that it will work in the direction of the particle's axis. So if the particles are moving up, then it will go up like that, okay? If you set this to 180 degrees on the XFOV, you're going to notice that the particles are going to move in a range of different directions, and look at that. That looks like a bush. It looks great. That would be wonderful for just that type of design. And you can grow ivy that way instead of using turbulence, or with turbulence. You can get this very nice variation there. So you can get a lot of really cool shapes. Let's set that to 360 and do it again. And you could put a really bright circle in the center, and you could say that looks like the sun. Okay, so it grows out in really cool ways, and that's the spiral effector. It's a dynamics tool for helping oscillate the positions of the particles, and they will end up having their own jagged movements that turn out to be very cool. So let's see. And if you add the roll effector with the clone geo, you'll have objects come out that spin. So if we use the box view type for the particles, it will show you. So there you go, now they're rolling. All right, so let's go ahead and turn those off. The next thing I want to do is show you how the surface and volume effectors work. So the very first thing to notice is that we have this object right here. We're going to go ahead and select all of the children, and we're going to connect objects and delete. So select, we're going to make it editable, select the children, and then hit connect object plus delete. Then we're going to go to the surface emitter and the volume, or the TP surface and the TP volume. And we're going to just quickly drag that into both of those objects. And we're going to add the thinking particle groups. We're just going to turn one on at a time. Okay. So the very first thing to notice is that if we just emit our particles, they just fly out like they normally will. But if we turn on the surface emitter, they're going to just jump into the surface and stay there. So if you want to have your particles in a different group, that have already been emitted get applied to the surface of an object, one thing you can do is use a deflector and turn off the bounce, and they'll hit the surface and they won't move. But if you want the object to if you want the particles to just jump to that object, for say like a procedural effect where you're having like something crawl under skin, or like boiling water, you want bubbles to form, you can use this with metaballs, or the what is it called? The proximal effect, or the proximal shader. That's what it's called. And that works with the surface shader, and you can use that with dynamics. You can also use the volume, or not the surface shader, the surface utility. And then there's also the volume utility. So if we turn this particle count up, you'll notice that now these particles are now building out the actual shape of this object. And another thing you could do is use that to clone geometry that gets emitted into this section that is dynamic. And you can get these really cool dynamic simulations with objects using the follow position feature in the dynamics. And you can have them burst out and kind of follow that shape. The next thing we're going to do is look at the group randomizer. So this is probably my favorite of all the new tools. It's going to be adding the most potential and flexibility. So the very first thing is we're going to take the group randomizer and make sure that we drop in the TP Toolkit. Now, one thing that's supposed to happen in this release but isn't happening just yet is you were supposed to have 10 different groups come with the toolkit, but for some reason Cinema only saved 2 of them. It has 7 in 1. So what you're going to have to do is just go into your thinking particle settings and add enough groups to work with. So what I'm going to do is add some more groups. Okay, so I'm going to add 2 more. Okay, I'm going to grab all of them, and I'm going to go to the color in the right section and change the color there so that they're all changing. And I'm going to quickly go through and change all of these colors while I explain it. So what happens is the particles are going to emit, and after they emit, they're going to sit there for the specified amount of time in the change rate. And after they sit there for that specified amount of time, they're going to adapt to a different thinking particle group based off of a random generation. So we're going to be using a lot of math that I've done in the back end. And what it does is it will calculate the thinking particle group that it should be put into. You can set it to change into as little as 1 random group up to, which is a little impractical, but technically it works. Or you can have as many as 10 groups. So, or actually technically you can set it to 0, but you shouldn't. It won't really work. Well, it'll work. Anyways, so what we're going to do is you're going to notice that all these particles, any particle in the TP Toolkit particle group is now going to change into whichever group is selected from this list down here, okay? And that's happening every 5 frames, okay? We can change that to every 1 frame, and now you have this really random burst of different particles. You can affect all the particles, and they will constantly change, and every particle group changes, so you can use the clone geo to change the groups, and you can have a very, I'd probably take a little bit more time between the changing, but this could be a really cool MoGraph sort of setup where the particles change, and so does the geometry, and you have this nice variation. You can change the random seed if you don't like the variation that you're getting. You can change it to change every 30 seconds. You can change it so it doesn't affect all of the particles, but just the particles in the TP Toolkit. You can change manually by, if you check the change manual button, what it's going to do is just affect every frame. And if you want to, say, affect every 5 seconds, or say you want to affect every 60 seconds, and you want to change it every 60 seconds, and then you just want to have a quick burst where they change, you can actually just keyframe that, and you'll have these little segments as well. So let's go ahead and change it down to 1 and show a good example of how this works, and then we'll go kill off all our particles. So let's go ahead and grab a cloner object, and actually what we're going to do is use the clone geo since we're going to be using that anyways. We're going to grab these and duplicate them. We'll make 10. Okay. And each of these particle groups is going to get its own item, or it's going to get its own cloner. And then we're going to drag in different objects. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is grab 10 different objects. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, grab all of those. We'll name it objs for objects. And we'll go down and drag these in. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the clone geo1, drag in the oil tank to the cloned object, clone geo2, capsule. This is actually clone geo2. 3. We'll add all of these, and it takes a little bit of time, but you know, it'll pay off when we get these all wrapped up. It'll look really cool. I am going to take that polygon and make it triangle. Alright, the plane, the disc, the cylinder, the cone, and the cube. Okay, now I'll hide those. And as these come out, they're all going to be set like that. So the next thing we're going to do is go in and take all of these objects right here, and we're just going to right click and go to Simulation, Rigid Body. And then we're going to go to Force and set Forward Position to 1. I guess that actually doesn't work that way. We are going to drop these on to the clone geo and then apply the tag to children and do all for the individual elements. You know what? I probably should apply that to all of them and then see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we'll get it fixed. There you go. Okay, now they're working the way they should. So we have all these objects and they are popping out like daisies. Just kidding. I watched Mulan the other day. So now these objects are flying out and we have a lot of particles coming out. One thing I'm going to do is change this to 360 degrees of directional emission and only 30 particles a second. Actually, I'll do 60. So there you go. The particles are now coming out, and I think that'd look a little bit better with 120 particles per second. Now the particles are all going to stay in one spot. Or not stay in one spot, they're going to fly out. I'm going to emit them in the same spot. There we go. Now they're going to stay in one spot more. So they're all going to connect with each other. That's pretty cool. As soon as those particles die, though, the objects will disappear. So you get these really cool simulations, and sometimes you'll get a big burst of objects like this, which is really cool when the group randomizer will stay on the same randomly stay on the same group for a short period of time. You get a very nice variation there. You can change it to change manual so it doesn't do that. But get these big bursts of just simulated objects, and for MoGraph that just looks so cool. And the very last thing I want to do is make sure that we can kill off those particles. We can do it either by age or by object trigger, kind of like in the TP Toolkit when I talk about how to change the particle group, the TP group manager. That object is the same as the kill particle manager, except for instead of changing the group, it will just kill the particles. So I'm just going to show you how to use the age, and we're going to go to the thinking particle settings and grab all of them. And now they are going to be killed off 25% into their lifespan. And that's great because now they're disappearing and we don't have to worry about this huge mess of particles. and we get this just dynamic variation of objects, and it just looks really, really sweet. It's very exciting. So those are a lot of the new objects currently in the TP Toolkit Pro, the newest release currently available. If you bought the original TP Toolkit, you're going to be able to get the TP Toolkit for a limited time only, 50% off. And if you have not gotten an email about that yet, go ahead and get in touch with me. It's just the upgrade fee. And then also, if you buy it before the 19th, currently we have a launch sale at 15% off, which technically is applying to both people that are upgrading and people that are just buying it straight out. So if you are upgrading, you get more than 50% off, luckily. So go ahead and check out the TP Toolkit Pro and the huge update that's coming. If you look at the website at thinkparticle.com, go to the shop and you can find the TP Toolkit Pro and learn a lot about all these new updates that we have and all the ones that are coming. If you make feature requests, we definitely will be looking into those, and we have some really fun stuff heading up. So let's go ahead and add a collider body just for the heck of it, and to the floor. And now we can move around and have this just big pile of mess on the floor that looks really cool. That's just fun to look at. That's just very interesting how it changes. So lots of really cool stuff. So thank you very much for watching. I'm Sam Welker from thinkparticle.com. And actually, we're going to talk just a little bit more. Let me check my notes here. Really quick, if you haven't used the TP Toolkit Pro before, it's a great way to get into thinking particles. You can get very complicated particles very quickly. It works with MoGraph. You can work with X particles through thinking particles. You can work with Turbulence FD. You can take the positions of these particles and cache them into null objects and then bring that through the external compositing object or tag. You can bring that into After Effects. You can export these into Houdini, Maya, Max, anything that can take an Alembic format or FBX. You can use it in Modo. Technically, you could simulate stuff, and I believe you can actually bring it into form in After Effects, trapcode form, and also Element 3D through OBJ sequences. And yeah, just keep an eye out for new stuff coming. We have like the TP tree object, which is a network emitter of, it'll emit particles and networks, and it will be made to build trees and also these 3D grid arrays. They're really cool. We also have the set data node, or the object that we're going to be working with. So we're going to be building a way to use, to have the ability to set data, any data to any object. And you can do that, well, we'll show you that when that comes out, but it'll have some really cool features in it. So you can set any type of data in that node. And yeah, we're going to have updates to the current elements. So take your particles to the next level with a TP Toolkit Pro, available now for only $59.99 on thinkparticle.com. It's quite a steal if you haven't worked with thinking particles before. It's very powerful, very complicated, and it's a great way to get into particles. And it's a lot cheaper than its competitors, any competitor on the market, and it works with its competitors. So, you know, it is different as well. So if you already are an X Particles user, pick up the TP Toolkit Pro and see what it can do for you. So thank you for watching. I'm Sam Welker, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.